Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of our kind of starter pack kit series. These are the 10 albums per genre that a newbie needs to own. So again, these aren't necessarily going to all be my absolute favorite albums from these bands. These aren't necessarily even the best, most classic albums from these bands. But we are taking into consideration someone who has never taken the dive into any of these genres and subgenres before. These are the 10 albums to kind of get your feet wet, right? If you like this, then there's a whole world of other stuff, right? Maybe more classic stuff, maybe the best, and the legendary albums might come to follow. Not that some of these aren't, but this is your best first steps to take into discovering a genre of music. That's kind of what these are all about. So if some of your absolute favorites aren't on this list, that's okay. These are meant for someone who is a first-time listener to progressive metal. That's what we're doing today. So we did prog about a week ago. All sorts of debate on what's prog and what's not, and well, but that band has better albums, and why didn't you include this band? And there's so many choices, right? We're just picking 10 that for someone to dive into a style of music. So today for progressive metal, and I always go back to the beginning, right? So we're going to start back to go chronologically. So the first album I'm going to talk about today that I think is a must-own for anybody getting into progressive metal. Now, I didn't include this band on the progressive rock episode for a reason. Because I'm trying not to double up on bands, because there's some bands that kind of like float between genres that you can include in multiple episodes. Trying very hard not to do that. There's so many bands and albums to choose from, right? We don't need to keep repeating bands over and over and over again. But this particular band, they have their feet firmly in prog rock, hard rock, and prog metal to my ears. And the more I thought about it, I know they have to be included somewhere. But to me, I think their importance to this genre we're talking about today, which is prog metal, progressive metal, I think is just too important to overlook. So I saved them for this episode. For all the people who are upset that they weren't included on the prog episode, I thought about it. I wanted to, but I think they're more important to talk about today. And that band is Rush, and the album is 2112 from 1976. Now, some may say, oh, but Pete, Rush aren't metal. Maybe some of their stuff is. There were, in various other episodes over the last couple of years in the prog scene and whatnot, when we talk about Rush, there's many people who are like, Rush isn't prog, right? They're not really anything, right? They're Rush. Yeah, their stuff is hard rock and their stuff is proggy. Their stuff has elements of metal in it, but they don't sit firmly in any of these categories. But they encompass all of it. But the reason why I'm including them, and specifically this album, I could have picked Hemispheres too. Could have picked Farewell to Kings, Permanent Waves, right? The reason I picked this one, could have picked Caress of Steel, as a matter of fact. But 2112, to me, has always been one of the most important albums in the formation of everything that we're going to talk about next. So many prog metal bands over the years. I've read tons of interviews. I've talked to a lot of them. They talk about the importance of this album and the couple albums that come after it. The band Rush in the 70s helped to formulate what we now know as prog metal. Those big, heavy, metallic riffs, right? With lots of volume. Intricate drumming, virtuoso guitar solos, and how about that high-pitched vocal wail of Geddy Lee? See, for me, I'm not going to a first-time person to prog rock, I'm not going to give them something like this, because it's really heavy. That shrieking vocal, right? You want to ease people in, right? But to someone who already maybe listens to a little bit of heavy music, but never has gotten into the more complex prog metal stuff, man, you got to have Rush. I mean, the title track, the 2112 epic, how heavy is that, right? That killer riffing from Alex, right? The banshee wailing from Geddy, that great drumming, right? A Passage to Bangkok, the heavy Something for Nothing. Then you got the cool Twilight Zone and Lessons and Tears, right? There's all sorts of flavors on this album, but so much of what you hear here spurred bands that we're going to talk about to go and create their own style of music. So I think the importance of Rush and this album on progressive metal cannot be understated. That's why I'm talking about them here on this episode today. That's why I saved them for this particular one. All right, let's move ahead to 1988. So this is a band that probably has a couple of albums that qualify here. But I'm going to go with the one that I think, it embraces everything we're going to talk about today. Here we have like conceptual storylines, multiple characters, right? Intricate arrangements, outstanding vocals, anthemic choruses, right? Darkness, drama, everything. And that's Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. Could have picked Warning, right? Easily. Could have picked really any of their 80s records. But this is the one. This is the one. Arguably the greatest heavy metal or progressive metal concept album of all time. Right? This takes what, Tommy and The Lamb and The Wall and brings it into the late 80s, bigger, more bombastic. Right? So many classics on here. Revolution Calling, Anarchy Next, The Needle Lies, right? Eyes of a Stranger, I Don't Believe in Love. I mean, there's so many classics on here. Jeff Tate and the band, obviously and arguably at the height of their powers, right? Operation Mindcrime, such an important album to progressive metal. All right, let's move ahead. A couple years. Another band where I really had a hard time picking the album from this band. But remember, this is a starter kit, right? These albums are meant to ease someone into a genre for the first time. And this band has a handful of potential picks. I went with this album because I think while it's still complex and dark and has all the attributes that we love so much about them, this is probably their first album where the choruses and some of the vocal melodies are a little bit more accessible, right? Not as heavy and crushing, or not as vocal shrieking and big dense arrangements and heavy monolithic riffs, and all that stuff is great. We love all that about this band, brooding and all that. But I think this album carries all those things, but it's a little bit more accessible for someone looking to dive into the music of Fate's Warning for the first time, and that's Parallels from 1991. Classic album, I should say. But classic tracks like Leave the Past Behind, Life in Stillwater is terrific. We Only Say Goodbye is great. The 11th Hour, that has everything that makes Fate's Warning so good. The amazing vocals of Ray Alder, right? Now a couple albums into his young career with the band. Jim Mathios and Frank Oresti's drumming, right? Mark Zonder, Joe DiBiase, Mark Zonder's drumming, so good on this. The Road Goes On Forever, Eye to Eye. What a great, catchy progressive metal song. This is how you make progressive metal accessible, right? But still give you all that intricacy and complexity that you really love and what you crave. And once you become familiar with this genre, that's what you're going to want, right? Fate's Warning were never a band about all these million solos and fast delight playing. It was more about mood and atmosphere and complex arrangements, the intricacies of the riffs and things like that, right? Awesome album, Parallels from Fate's Warning. Can't have that without this next album. To me, this next album, probably the most important album to everything that came afterwards. Because these guys took the influences of all three bands that we just talked about and created something a little bit different, and in turn really made progressive metal one of the fastest rising little subgenres during the 90s and going forwards. After this album came out, bands popping up everywhere wanting to do something similar, and that is 1992's Images and Words by Dream Theater. They have lots of great albums, but this is always where you need to start. And this arguably should be the first album you listen to when you're new to prog metal. These great soaring melodic vocals, these absolutely catchy earworm choruses, big riffs, blazing, shredding guitar and keyboard solos, and an unbelievable rhythm section. Kevin Moore, James Labrie, John Patitucci, John Mayung, and Mike Portnoy. All of them so important to the early years of Dream Theater. Of course, Kevin Moore would stand for one more album before he would leave. In come Derek Sherinian. Eventually he would leave. Jordan Rudess would come in, right? But the rest of the lineup would stay intact for a good many years before Mike Portnoy left. He's now back again after about a decade or so, right? But yeah, this is Pull Me Under, Learning to Live, Metropolis Part 1, Under a Glass Moon. Oh, God, guitar solo, that is just killer. Take the Time, Surrounded, Another Day, Wait for Sleep. Everything on here is great, whether it's the softer, more ballady stuff or the big crushing progressive metal epics, right? Crazy stuff. And the musicality, the intricate nature of all the arrangements, just jaw-droppingly great for a bunch of young guys from Long Island, right? Amazing stuff. You got to have images and words. All right. So we're going to go from 1992, we're going to go all the way up to 1997. And in between these two albums, all sorts of stuff by all sorts of bands, right? Many would be easy recommendations, but I'm going with the ones that you got to hear first. Then you can explore everything else. So this is 1997. This is the third album from this band. This is the one that kind of really, really got them noticed. This is the one that I heard first. And even though I have other albums in their catalog that I like more, I still fully realize and have a fondness for this album because of how important it was to me as someone who's, looking to explore more prog metal stuff during the 90s. And from 1997, we have from New Jersey, Symphony X, The Divine Wings of Tragedy. Killer album. It's progressive metal, but it's also part neoclassical metal, it's part power metal, symphonic metal, and prog rock all mixed up together. Right? How about the crazy kickoff track of Sins and Shadows? Just amazing. Michael Romeo's guitar riffing and soloing, just off the charts. He's such a great guitar player and composer. He writes all the music to this band. Russell Allen's vocals. The rest of the band, amazing. Sea of Lies, Crushing, Out of the Ashes, The Accolade. Great example of how you can make a big, heavy, symphonic metal epic with amazing, memorable, almost pop-like choruses and vocal harmonies. Unbelievable. The Pharaoh, The Eyes of Medusa, The Witching Hour. And how about the near 21-minute Divine Wings of Tragedy title track? Just absolutely crushing in all its movements, man. Russell Allen doing all those different vocal styles throughout. So good. Candlelight Fantasia, a dynamite album. I would argue probably a near perfect album, if it isn't already perfect. Like I said, they've come out with other albums that I like even more. But this is where you start. You have to have Symphony X. All right, let's go just a couple years, right? This is probably, out of everything on my list, this is easily the most obscure. This was never a mainstream success. This was a band that released an album and then broke up and we never heard from them again. Guys in the band going off and doing all sorts of other things, but they never took what they created on this album and made a career out of it, sadly, but it still remains one of the great progressive metal albums of all time. From 2000, Spiral Architect, A Skeptic's Universe. So intricate, so meticulously put together. The arrangements are just jaw-droppingly incredible. You got these great vocals, the guitars, the drumming, the bass playing, just everything, just weaving around each other, but yet it's just so intoxicating to listen to. I mean, Occam's Razor, Cloud Constructor, Conjuring Collapse, Spinning, Excessit, Fountainhead, all sorts of really, really, really killer arrangements and songs on here. And it's one of those albums that it's already now, 24, 25 years old. It still sounds fresh today. And it's just such a shame that this band never went on and did anything else together. But it's an absolute classic of the genre and one you must hear when you're diving into this style of music. All right, next up. Going to go ahead a year to 2001. Another band that's kind of got their start in music that maybe not so proggy, but still kind of really advanced for what they were doing. Lots of albums to choose from. I would argue the first one you should hear, if you're new to this genre and new to this band, is 2001's Lateralis from Tool. Got to have some Tool on here. Tool's a great example for this genre because it's like they, are they part of the alternative rock and metal genre, but yet their music is way more complex and out there and strange compared to a lot of their other fellow bands who were popping up all over the place in the 90s, but yet very, very different style of band. You had the crazy drumming of Danny Carey and the really interesting different vocals and the looping guitars and this herky-jerky arrangements and things like that. And the music is almost as psychedelic as it is metal, right? Very, very cool stuff. All sorts of great tracks on here. You got Schism is amazing, and Parabola, another one. The Grudge is good. Disposition, so many, and all the tunes just kind of like morph and twist and segue into each other so well. They have other albums that some are a little bit more accessible, some are a little bit more impenetrable, but I think the one that does it all the best is Lateralis from Tool, and that's a great album for a newbie to this genre. All right, we're going to go to 2005. So this is a band that I absolutely had to have on this list, but here's the issue. This is a list for newbies. And some of this band's stuff, while highly, highly progressive and absolutely is progressive metal and lots of classics of progressive metal, there's an extreme nature to a lot of the early part of their catalog that maybe isn't best for someone just looking to get into prog metal for the first time. I don't want to scare people off, right? So, but then some of the latter part of the catalog, where they dropped a lot of the extreme nature of their music, it's not so much metal anymore. So I tried to go somewhere in between, where there's still some extreme nature of the music, but it's toned down a bit because they're just almost ready to say goodbye to it. But it's still metal, it's still highly complicated and crushing music. So I went with 2005's Ghost Reveries from Opeth from Sweden. This is, of course, the deluxe edition. People know that's not what my cover looks like. There's the actual cover of the regular album. So, of course, Sweden's Opeth, everybody's probably saying, well, but Blackwater Park, that's their classic album. It is. But you got to start somewhere first. If you've never listened to prog metal before, and if you've never listened to extreme metal before, would I say Blackwater Park is the first place to go? Maybe not quite. I'm going to ease you in a little bit first, but then you got to listen to that. That's why I like Ghost Reveries, because I think this album, while it still does have death growls on the album, it's not the main vocal presence on the album. There's more clean vocals on this album than death growls. But you've got but so much of the complexity and the big bombastic nature of this band is here. The little folky bits, the proggy bits, the crushing metal bits. Ghost of Perdition is so good. The Baying of the Hounds is kind of like a runaway extreme version of Uriah Heep or Deep Purple. You got the lovely Beyond the Mire, Atonement, Reverie, Harlequin Force, The Hours of Wealth, right? The Grand Conjuration, so complex. You get the growls and the clean vocals combating Isolation Years. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Yeah, there's still growls here, but I think you get more of the other side of Opeth on this album, and then Watershed, the next album, even more so, and then, of course, they do away with all the death metal elements altogether and just become a progressive rock, psychedelic rock, hard rock band going forwards. But I think Ghost Reveries is a great place to start with Opeth, and I would say if you start with this and you really like what you hear on this one, well, then you absolutely need to go to Blackwater Park next. Still Life as well. It's another great one. But Blackwater Park, an amazing album. Most people claim is their best album. I don't know if I'd argue that all too much. And but maybe start here first. Either way. Doesn't really matter. Either way. Got to have Opeth in this discussion. All right, so we're going to go up to 2009. A band here from the U.S. who their first couple of albums, big, heavy, kind of post-hardcore type metal stuff. And then all of a sudden starting to get more and more complex with their arrangements. The guitar playing is just going off the charts, doing all these complex weaving type things, big bludgeoning riffs, and all these fills and things like that. And the drummer, man, he's awesome too. Two vocalists, just great stuff. But I think, to me, their big prog metal statement above any of the other ones has got to be 2009's Crack the Sky from Mastodon. Got to have this. Absolutely got to have it. The Czar is amazing. Just go out and listen to that right now. Stop what you're doing. You stop watching here. Put me on pause. Go listen to The Czar. Killer, killer stuff. Quintessence, so good. Crack the Sky, the title track is amazing. The Last Baron, Oblivion. I mean, not a bad song on here. It's just this big, amazing ride that they take you through with, and it's just along the way, it's just absolutely unbelievable. Great production on here as well. And it's just cool to hear, a lot of prog metal bands that we've seen over the last like 25, 30 years. So many coming from like Europe and Scandinavia and whatnot. And here we've got an American band doing something a little bit different. They don't sound like Dream Theater, don't sound like any of the other bands we've talked about so far. They're definitely something different because, of course, they're coming from a different place. They're coming from sludge and hardcore, right, and things like that. Here they do their own thing. Let's take that framework and let's make it highly progressive and up the musicality a couple hundred notches, right? Amazing album, Crack the Sky from Mastodon. You gotta have it. Last but not least, we're going to go to the UK, 2013. You can pick any one of this band's albums, any one. They're all a great place to start. Here, I'm going to go with my favorite, just because to me I think it's their strongest record, and I think that it's just absolutely beautiful. It's so powerful. Got amazing vocals, great choruses, and just drop dead incredible musicianship. Amazing guitar and keyboard solos. The arrangements just suck you right in. It's The Mountain from the band Haken. Of course, one of the great prog metal bands of the last decade and a half, right? So good. This album is already 11 years old, right? Anything on here is amazing. Atlas Stone, Cockroach King is one of their classics. So good. Falling Back to Earth, Pareidolia, The Path, whatever. It's all good. Great vocals. And again, they early on basically took their influence from like Dream Theater, but they really went off and did their own path, and they've managed to keep their music fresh from album to album, which I think is really good, and change little bits along the ways to keep the whole catalog sounding different from each other. No two albums sound identical, but you definitely have like eras in their discography, I think. But this to me is them absolutely peaking as a band. Like I said, there's no bad albums in their catalog, but to me, for a first time listening to progressive metal, you got to go with Haken, The Mountain, and it's so melodic. So melodic. Everything about them is always so melodic. The guitar playing is melodic, the keyboards, the vocals, the whole thing, everything. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. So those are your 10. 10 progressive albums a newbie needs to own. This is your starter kit. If you like what you hear in here, there's a lot other stuff to dive into. I do have some honorable mentions. So this was actually really tough. I think out of all the ones I've done so far, this was the toughest because there's a whole bunch of other albums that are almost just as essential to listen to get into this genre, I think. But I picked those as a first stab. Other ones you want to check out, Voivod from Canada, Nothing Face from 1989. Another really great album that you'll want to check out. Again, Voivod, I kind of left them out because Voivod just had this short period where they were doing kind of proggy metal stuff. Because early on, they were kind of like a thrash band, and then they went to this kind of sci-fi metal, a little bit of prog metal, and then back to doing the normal Voivod stuff. But Nothing Face is a terrific, terrific album that I would recommend to anybody new to prog metal. Pain of Salvation's Remedy Lane from 2002, terrific. Swedish band. Very original. They decided not to do the kind of Dream Theater thing. They forged their own path. They're probably little bits of Faith No More, maybe some other stuff, but they're totally their own sound. Remedy Lane is a great concept record. I would recommend that. Arion Into the Electric Castle from 1998. Another great, example of how to take prog rock and prog metal and make it big and sprawling and bring in lots of guest stars to this big bombastic thing. And every album has all sorts of different singers and instrumentalists. Really, really good stuff. That's the brainchild of Arjen Lucassen. Awesome stuff, Arion. You can't go wrong with any of their records. Animals as Leaders, their self-titled debut from 2009. Some people might love progressive metal that doesn't have any singing, right? Instrumental stuff. Animals as Leaders are amazing musicians, and they're doing some of the coolest stuff you'll ever hear. It's totally different than anything we've talked about today. I would absolutely recommend their first album and anything after that. They're all really good. Something more from the death metal side of things, Focus by Cynic. Right? One of those early bands came out in the early 90s from the Florida scene who were incorporating prog and space rock and things like that into their death metal framework. Really, really highly intricate technical progressive metal stuff right there. So if you can kind of get into Opeth and you kind of like that, there's a world of other stuff. Death, also, Sound of Perseverance. I mean, so many progressive death metal bands too that you could kind of veer off into from here. Between the Buried and Me, Colors, one of the great prog metal bands of the last 20 years. Colors is their great concept album, one of a couple of them, and so amazing. And I think, if you discover that you kind of like Opeth and you listen to a couple of other bands that have more of like an extreme metal aspect to them, as Between the Buried and Me does, just ridiculous musicality. Right, and mixing of clean and harsh vocals on there, just really great stuff. And band I do want to mention, maybe not something you want to dive into right off the bat, but definitely once you start getting used to all this stuff, the band Vandenplas. Amazing band from Germany, right? So good. They basically take like kind of what Dream Theater was starting and have forged their own path, right? Great lead vocals, lots of concept albums, just big and bright, blazing guitars, lots of keyboards, and just really pleasing albums to listen to. Another real veteran band on the scene. They've been around for quite a while. And there's so many more, guys. There's so many more. So a lot of people are going to be watching and saying, oh, you forgot this band, you forgot that band. It's like you can't include everybody. But I think my 10 is a really good starter pack for you if you're brand new to prog metal. Maybe you've only ever been a prog fan. You just never much on metal, but you want to start listening to some of the more metal stuff in the prog genre. Can't go wrong with these albums. And if you're someone who's just, maybe you've only been just a general rock fan or a pop fan or whatever, but you want to kind of discover some of these things called progressive, right, whether it be prog rock or prog metal, hope you enjoy some of these selections here. I think you can't do wrong with diving into these first, and once you've done, there's a wealth of other albums by these bands and many others that are out there to await you. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also, down below, we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, and our Cameo page. So thank you in advance for all your support there. And we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.